We've talked an awful lot about education here at the Mackinac Policy Conference, but we decided to focus a little bit on early childhood education before kids even get to kindergarten. And I sat down with Ali Webb from the Kellogg Foundation to do that. Education is one of the large topics here at the Mackinac Policy Conference, and joining me now is Ali Webb. She's the Director of Michigan Programs for the Kellogg Foundation. Ali, thanks so much for joining me. I appreciate it.
So glad to be here.
You know, talking about education as a whole, in the state of Michigan, not even looking directly at Southeast Michigan or Detroit, where a lot of focus is, but tell me what you believe is the importance of making sure our education standards start to rise up a little bit here in the state in terms of success.
It is such a huge issue. We will not prosper as a state if we can't educate our children. It's just all the efforts that we are making at the pipeline and getting people into jobs and skilled workforce. If we don't have the fundamental underpinnings of a high quality education system like we used to have in Michigan, then the long-term future of this state is just we're not going to be competitive in the United States or globally.
What do you believe makes a high quality education system?
Well, we at the Kellogg Foundation, our focus is really on the early years. So we believe that a baby, even before it's born, has to be born at a healthy weight. That child has to meet its developmental milestones, so it has to be able to walk and talk. And the educational environment for those youngest residents has to be of a high quality, because if kids don't get to school ready for school, then we begin the remediation process all the way through. And it's very expensive to reteach if you don't teach in those early years. So at the Kellogg Foundation, it's really how do we get all of Michigan's youngest residents into high quality early education.
And ready for school. So how do you do that when you start to tackle programs that are maybe helping out parents and helping them with their parenting skills?
That's a huge part. I mean, the first teacher is, of course, the parent or the caregiver. And we parents, I haven't met a parent who doesn't want the best for their child. I mean, parents really are the best first teachers, and some folks need some additional help. I mean, when I had my daughter 19 years ago, I didn't have any idea what I was doing, and I stumbled through it, my husband and myself, and so parents being ready to teach, having places and whether they're center-based or home-based for children to go because I think the latest statistics, 68-70% of families, the parent, either if it's a single parent or both parents are working. And so our children, it's not just nice, it's a requirement that they have a safe, highly qualified place for their child to be while they're working.
We have seen some emphasis coming out of Lansing finally on this early childhood education and preschool accessible to a lot more children in Michigan than previously had been. Is it hard to balance where the education monies are going these days?
Oh, it really hurts my heart when we talk about not being able to afford early childhood because we have to pay for K-12, or we can't pay for university, or that's a false choice. We have to start at zero, and we have to stay with that child all the way through 22, because all of the really fascinating research that's being done now is if we don't invest in starting early and through higher ed, those children are going to become a net drain on society. It's an economic necessity. It's the economic argument that if you don't believe it from a moral perspective or because it's the right thing to do, our economy in Michigan's not going to thrive if our residents aren't educated, and they're not going to be educated if they don't start early. And that we just have to suck it up and deal with it.
And it's interesting, it's because it's finally that conversation that's weaving into conferences like this, when you sit down and we're talking about business, we're talking about job training, and you're like, but we need to talk about the very beginning, and once we get these kids started, what do you think it's going to take from a statewide level for us to start to achieve or to turn the page here and do the right thing?
Yeah. Well, Governor Snyder and the legislature took an enormous first step when they put $130 million into the Great Start Readiness program. What we found is that children who were in Great Start Readiness, because we have a decade of experience now, 70% of the young people who get that early start graduate from high school if they're children of color, whereas only I think it's 13 to 17% who don't get that great start, they don't graduate. So I mean, the math, I'm not a big math person, but those numbers don't add up to me. So if we can invest in them, in particularly low-income children or children at risk, whether they're children of color or white children, we know that it pays off.
Yeah.
And then we're not going to have to remediate them, and we're not going to have them repeat kindergarten or do all the other things that end up having to happen when you don't get kids to the starting line of life in an equal fashion. And this conference is great this year because the whole pillar of a cohesion really is about making that available to all children.
And making that connection finally, economically as well.
Yeah, and it's very powerful.
All right, well, thanks for all you're doing at Kellogg Foundation,
Well, thank
Ali
you.
Webb, for joining
Appreciate
us.
it.
I appreciate it.